Seems odd to say this, but there was a time when the word cinematic universe didn't mean what it means today. And welcome back to the heart of the stories we tell. I'm Rob the host, and this is another look deep into what makes a story, a theory on storytelling by a storyteller who believes that every story has merit. And tonight's episode is a recap and relook at the Marvel MCU Phase 1. In fact, I'd have to say that this is actually how the MCU changed the world, at least the cinematic world. So we're going to go back in time a little bit. But before we do, I just want to say overall, Phase 1 is a solid gold. The only thing keeping it from platinum is a few small little missteps. All in all, though, I'm going to reiterate this again and again. Marvel changed everything. And I guess I have to put a spoiler alert here. I don't know why. I mean, these are really old movies. Everyone's seen them. But okay. The base overall is all about these gems or stones. But we didn't know that back when this all started. You have to understand, Marvel played the long game, and some of it they made up as they went, and you can obviously see that, and again, they had missteps. But getting this together was huge. We're right now at the tail end of a third phase, and we're getting ready to do the impossible. But the first two phases are already done, so we can look back at those. And this is my look back at Phase 1, the beginning of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess you could call it our look at the Avengers Initiative, because that's what they called it when they put it together into a movie collection. And overall, the timeline's pretty straightforward for this. We go Iron Man, we go Hulk, we go Iron Man 2, we go Thor, we go Captain America, and then the movie that changed everything, The Avengers. You have to understand that for the longest time, the idea of a cinematic universe was a different idea. We had ideas of things like James Bond that had, 20, 30 sequels. I could probably look that up, but I'm not going to. We have ideas of prequels and the ideas of movies that take place in the same world. We even have little cameo tricks, little things where people will drop an Easter egg here or there. And we've had comic book movies that tie together. Before this came out, we had multiple X-Men movies. We had the idea that they all existed. But you know what we didn't have? We didn't have Spider-Man swinging by the X-Men. We didn't have the Fantastic Four showing up in the middle of another person's movie. And there's a very good reason for this. Marvel and DC were the two big boys when it came to comic book movies. And Marvel didn't have its own studio. They were just selling off the rights here, there, everywhere. DC, on the other hand, even though they had the cinematic rights for all of their movies through Warner Brothers, never saw a reason to. Their movies were killing it. Superman and Batman could put butts in seats no matter what. And if they didn't need to, why would they? The idea of putting Superman and Batman in the same movie had come up before, but never in a big way. And Marvel was in trouble because they had sold their big boys. Spider-Man and X-Men were the best sellers, put butts in seats. So they had to go to what's really the second string, the Avengers. And it all started with this man, Robert Downey Jr., playing Tony Stark. And you know what? He was an asshole. He was a womanizer. There were some really funny lines. The movie was not the best movie ever, but it was definitely good. It was well written, and if you listen to the stories they tell on set, they supposedly were in rewrites mid-thing. There were a couple things that, how it should have ended made fun of. But at the end of the day, at the end of that movie, there were some awesome moments, and critics and fans responded to that. But you know what really changed the whole world? How the movie really ended. Throughout the whole thing, Agent Coulson, who we didn't know anything special about at the time, kept showing up, and I remember sitting in the theater with my friend Ross. And I remember every time he was going through a word, the strategic homeland, I'm like, wait, is that S.H.I.E.L.D.? Are they Easter egging S.H.I.E.L.D. here? And so at the end, when he actually said, you can just call us S.H.I.E.L.D., I totally geeked out. I thought it was the best thing ever. Then came the scene that I thought was so funny, the whole, well, the truth is, I am Iron Man. And I laughed. And we sat in the theater for a second, watching those credits roll, thinking how great it was. Then came the biggest surprise. The fact that you think you're the only hero that I have to deal with, you think you're the only person I do? Samuel L. Jackson is what changed the world. Because I left Iron Man 1 going, oh my god, are they really going to do it? Are they going to put them all together? Are we going to see the Avengers on screen? And I couldn't believe it. But then the next movie came out. And the next one was Hulk. And good, bad, indifferent. There's a lot of things you can say, but at the end of the day, the Hulk is a hard thing to transfer when it's not animated, and they did some really cool things, and I kind of liked the way they did a lot of it. And I still think that one of the best things to come out of it is the way they portrayed Abomination. But realistically, yeah, there were a lot of things that they could have done better, and I'm sure if they went back now, and this is one of those movies that keeps it from being a platinum and makes it a gold for overall phase one. But then, at the end, we had another one of those oh my god moments. Mr. Stark, why do you always have such amazing suit? I still wasn't sure if they could pull it off at the time. I mean, really. There was so much going on. And then the story started coming out that there was going to be an Iron Man 2, and I'm like, oh, but what about the Avengers? And Iron Man 2 was, well, they had some casting problems, and this is where we had to change who plays War Machine. We have that great scene that just explains Tony Stark so perfectly. But I privatized world freedom. You can thank me. And we had a lot of cool Easter eggs for comic book things like the suitcase armor. And we had Black Widow show up. And you know what? I love Black Widow, both in the comics and in the movies. Kind of annoyed she never got her own movie, though. That's another misstep, in my humble opinion. But it kind of felt more setup-y. Like, all they were trying to do was introduce things and throw some Easter eggs. And yeah, I mean, it was fun. I especially liked Hammer and the jokes at his expense. But combining Whiplash and Titanium Man just didn't feel right to me. And all throughout it, it just felt like the entire movie was made as a setup. And a lot of people made that complaint. Iron Man 2 is probably the weakest of the Iron Man movies. But it still had some awesomeness, with Agent Coulson coming back to once again be who's bringing the whole team together. Because, hey, look at this, we found it. And what did they find? Why, Thor's hammer. And it leads us right into Thor. And I was so pumped. By this point, I was like, yes, we're going to do this. We're going to have Thor, and then we're going to have Captain America, and this is going to be great. And then I went to go see Thor, and I actually liked it. I know a lot of people say they didn't, but at the end of the day, it was a different type of movie, and it completely changed the idea of what we could do. This was magic. This was the god of thunder walking around. And yeah, we still had some funny stuff, and I have to admit, Coulson stole the show. And we have this great scene where we are introduced to all these different characters, including a cameo by Hawkeye, kind of tying everything together. And then the big oh shit moment when Loki and the scientist we're introduced to are looking at the cosmic cube, or what we thought was the cosmic cube, and it's an artifact out of myth and history. And as soon as he said that, as soon as Nick Fury said "and history," me and my friend Ross, who again were watching this movie together, sat there and said, I bet you that's going to be in the Captain America movie. I bet that's the Cosmic Cube. And by the time the next movie rolled around, all doubt was gone, because Captain America, the First Avenger, showcased just exactly how awesome this series was. When they could take a CGI effect and turn this guy into that guy, it just blew my mind. The fact that they could still have jokes like him punching out Hitler, while at the same time having nasty, nasty villains. Now, I will say, there are some missteps in this one as well. Hydra's a cool villain to use, but you know what? I kind of have this problem with the fact that Captain America, in my mind, was always fighting Nazis, and they kind of downplayed just how much the Nazis mattered in this movie, to the point where Hydra became the enemy. But yeah, we got the Cosmic Cube, and it wasn't really, there was always something off about it. We also were introduced to Howard Stark, Tony's father, and we have what might be one of the best lines in any cinematic universe ever. People ask how you make people like Captain America or Superman cool. I point to the scene when he's captured by Red Skull. Red Skull's like, what makes you so special? What makes you better than me? Nothing. I'm just a kid from Brooklyn. Totally encapsulates that Boy Scout, shucks moment that makes Captain America who he is. But that wasn't the scene that totally threw everything for a loop. It was him waking up. And it was Nick Fury again, saying, hey, welcome to the Avengers. And that is where we're going to next. The movie that changed the world. The Avengers proved something that everyone had always wanted to be true. The fact that you could put these sorts of things together. But there were some hiccups there, too. We had to recast Hulk, and there were some things that maybe went a little slower than they wanted. But they got to keep the humor, and they got to keep all the things that made the MCU up to that point so great, including some badass action scenes. But at the end of the day, what it really did was it allowed people that were the way comic books had done it forever to work in the movies. See, in comic books, you can have a scientist like Tony Stark and a god like Thor work together, even though thematically they don't fit. Why? Because we just don't care. We're just going to throw them all together and say, in the Avengers, they're Earth's mightiest heroes. In fact, I want to say exactly what Stan Lee said. On a day unlike any other, when no one hero could stand alone, was the day the Avengers were born. And it's a pretty awesome idea. And of course, we're introduced to the Shatari and the staff of Loki, and already people were talking about it. But its end sequence was a joke. Well, except for this guy. Because this guy is another thing that changed everything. This is Thanos. And trust me, there were plenty of people in the theater going, "Oh, who's that?" He's a villain unlike any that comic book movies had done before. He was someone that didn't challenge just the Avengers, but the entire MCU. In fact, when his crossover, the Infinite Gauntlet, and later the Infinite War and Infinity Crusades came about, they had some of the most powerful cosmic things. It was so reaching, so out there. Could they really do it? I mean, Marvel still didn't own their own products, not all of them, without Galactus, without Doom, and do they have the Watcher? The question became just so insurmountable. Could they be gonna do the Infinite Gauntlet? We'd seen the Gauntlet. It was in the Thor movie. It was just an Easter egg. But what was going on? And yeah, they did address that a little bit off and on. And there was a whole nother phase that they've already finished and has come and gone that we could talk about. But I want you to think about this. They did the impossible. They took these 5 movies that all had different themes and ideas, and they put them together to make one solid story made up of chapters of each individual story. But now let's talk about how they actually changed the world. Because with those few words, Nick Fury did something no one had ever thought possible by connecting those movies. And every other studio, still to this day, rushes to catch up. Harry Potter has a universe, Star Trek has a universe, Star Wars has a universe, DC is in a scramble to try to get something going their universe. But at the end of the day, the idea that not just one story could be told in the universe, that we could alternate, and that we could go to and fro with characters, is just entirely an MCU concept. Can you imagine? I mean, think about it this way. We could have a Star Trek cinematic universe now that has the Enterprise and the Excelsior and the Ambassador all be different ships in different quadrants. And Star Trek did do that to a certain extent. There was a point in time in which Deep Space Nine and Star Trek The Next Generation was on at the same time. There was a point in time when Deep Space Nine and Voyager was on at the same time. They overlapped. They could tell stories in different parts of their universe. And that's what these guys did. But they did it on such a level that no one thought that it could be done. And now everyone wants to get in on that act. Because, pa-ching, that's where the money is. As of today, the top 12 highest rating movies ever for money, 4 of them are in the MCU. And if you look at it, 3 others are someone else's attempt to make an expanded cinematic universe. So what do I think this means for the future of cinematic universes? I think that it's a good start. There's a talk about a Hasbro one, where they're going to combine G.I. Joe and Mask and several others. And I've talked about that before, including my own idea on how I would do a Mask movie. But at the end of the day, the idea of linking an entire universe, the ability to have, say, Jason Bourne in 007 in the same universe, or something like it, is just so amazing. But remember, it's not all happy and perfect, because then we go into Marvel Phase 2, and there were some more missteps there. But there was also my favorite comic book movie of all time in there, or at least a very close runner second, if not. And there's still more. There's a Phase 3 that we're in now, and there's going to be a Phase 4. How long are the Marvel movies going to go? I've heard people say they have them planned out till 2030 or 2040. And it's amazing. Do you know what's coming up? We're going to get Spider-Man and Miss Marvel and a whole bunch of my favorites. And the MCU isn't just in the movies either. I love Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and the Netflix stuff is really good, although I do have some qualms with how those things mesh in with the MCU itself. At the end of the day, I mean, we have Defenders coming up too, which is going to be another huge change, another huge deviation. And Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is still rocking. I cover that every couple of weeks on my channel, and we have Punisher and Cloak and Dagger, and who knows what's going to come next. Because the MCU has made enough good promises and kept them that we're going to let them get away with just about anything. We're going to let them try something new, and everyone's going to tune in just to see what it's like. So not only did the MCU change the world once, it's going to do it again. I think Netflix The Defenders is going to be a big one. But I wonder what you guys think. Let me know down in the comment section. Do you think that the Marvel Phase 1 changed history? Do you think Netflix movies are going to do it again? Do you think that I should be reviewing the second phase or the third? Or maybe comparing them to the other comic book movies that came before and since? Either way, let me know down in the comments, and then like and share this video, and try to subscribe to my channel if you like my insane ramblings on different types of stories, because I do this a lot. I talk about almost all the comic book stuff happening in movies, TV shows, you name it, and I'm trying to build a community so that we can take a walk through all of the hearts of the stories we tell. Thanks for watching, have a good night, and see you at the movies.